Terrible podcast by comics. I'm your host, Eerie Diamond. Hi.
Hello.
Let's meet our guests today, Sergio Novoa and Pam Benjamin, two of my favorite people in the world. Hey, I know that was a very quick intro. Hey, Sergio, tell me a little bit about you. Tell the peeps. Don't tell me, I already know about you, but you know, a little bit about you.
I'm in the witness protection program, so there's only so much I can say. Let's see, I lived in San Francisco for 32 years, and I moved to LA, so now I live in LA, and I've started producing shows here. And yeah, I mean, what else? You know, I love to travel, I love animals. I smoked weed for the first time when I turned 40, so yeah.
Wow, that is a fun fact. How was it?
It was interesting. I lost so much control that I thought, how do people willingly want to be in this state of mind? I've since then have built a tolerance for it. So now I just laugh at really, really stupid things. And my friends tell me, just so you know, tomorrow this won't be funny. But it just makes me laugh. It really makes me laugh.
Yeah, see, I don't really like it. I don't really like it because I find that when I'm at a party and I smoke weed, suddenly I am not witty anymore. I'm like, huh? And then like 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh shit. And then my friends, because I'm one of those people who constantly like, you know, teases my friends and stuff, they find out that I'm slow that night and they just attack me. Like, you know, they make fun of me. They try to get me back for all the times I made fun of them in front of girls they were trying to hang out with. And it's feeding frenzy. It's not cool. And then I get hungry and then I go to sleep. So I don't find it to be a fun drug for me. But speaking of pot, hey, Pam.
I'm like, you don't like swimming with the merciless sharks? Of course, that's it. And when you're on weed, it's so much more exciting. It's like, I could lose a finger. Weed. What's the question?
Oh, who are you? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm Pam Benjamin, and Mutiny Radio, that's what I do. And, you know, I have an edible complex. Yeah, my weed my pee smells like weed. No, I love weed, but I mean, artistically, I think it forwards my storytelling ability in the written form sometimes. No, I don't know. What am I supposed to answer question wise? Yeah, Mutiny Radio, podcasts, shows. I'm running like 6 weeklies right now, and then these two other places, they want me to start a late night open mic on Tuesdays, and then this place wants a once a month on Saturdays, and then I'm booking this show. I mean, things are getting out of hand, but it's great. I mean, so I'm learning how to trust other people because I can't clone myself. And I realize that's like a terrible narcissistic and pretentious thing to say, but I'm learning how to trust other individuals because I can't run this many open mics by myself. Yeah, I don't know what else am I doing? Yeah, I was on Alameda last night. I don't know. I love comedy, love performing.
So Pam, hold on. Let's organize this a little bit. So you run and own Mutiny Radio. You also are a producer of many shows, not just at Mutiny Radio, but many other shows all over the city, and which are fabulous. I love your shows. I know one of the main reasons I got you and Sergio together here is because Sergio also runs. How many shows are you running right now, Sergio?
Right now, just running one. I don't want to duplicate what I did in San Francisco. As Pam says, learning to trust other people because you cannot clone yourself. It's a lot of work. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna do one show and we're gonna hold it for as long as we can before we do anything else.
There's a little bit of feedback and I'm trying to figure out who it's from. You think it might be from you?
Me?
Let's see, mute yourself real quick. If you don't mind.
Diagnose.
I think it might be you, Sergio. A little bit of feedback. I don't know what it might be.
Looping.
I'm
Maybe do
Buffering.
that.
Buffering.
see if that makes a difference.
Oh, yeah. Much better. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
But at one point, what was the most shows that you were producing at one point?
I was doing about 1 show a week, 6 shows a month at one point, which is
Okay.
a lot having a full-time job.
Yeah. And Pam, do you also still have a full-time job?
No, Mutiny Radio is and comedy are my sole. That's my sole income. So
Nice.
yeah, it's kind of living the dream. That's all I do. I don't nanny anymore. I don't do anything. Everything is Mutiny Radio. So
Wow.
I mean, that's a
Good for
blessing.
you.
Well, it's also that my overhead is incredibly low. Like I'm on food stamps and I can't even afford deodorant. I use baking soda you can buy on food stamps, and I use almond oil, which you can buy on food stamps. And I put almond oil on my face because olive oil has a scent to it. You'd be surprised. But almond oil, and then I mix the almond oil with the baking powder, and I can use it as deodorant. And same with toothpaste, baking soda. You just dip your toothbrush in it. I know that there's ways I've cut my budget so that I can be an artist. And it's sad that in the United States, there's no way for me to actually make a living wage. Same thing with teachers, anything that you like to do for a living. Nobody wants you to be successful at that because they're jealous because they have a stupid insurance job and they're angry that you get to be happy. We could all be happy if we lowered, if we equitized our needs and our wants. But so I need a lot less than people. I need cat food and litter. So I need like $30 a month for that. But
So your cat's eating better than you is what you're trying to tell me. Is that what you're trying to say?
What I'm saying is, no, my food stamps are amazing, but I can't buy cat food with food stamps. I have to buy their food in cash. But my food is, I used to cook professionally. So I love cooking. Yeah, and that's why when I do my shows, I don't have the opportunity to pay my comics very much because I don't charge for shows, but I ask for tips. But the one thing, because I want to help out the restaurants and stuff, that was the impetus for getting so many of these outdoor shows during COVID. It wasn't, I want stage time, but it was also, I'm trying to help local businesses like myself stay alive. And I need so very little that sort of being a part of them really worked out for me. And it's all very little, like it's selling 30 seats twice a week. It's like, woohoo. I don't like to get too big. I like to stay, what I feel is successful. So smaller, but my whole deal is I want my comics to eat. So I always feed and drink my comics. And then, cause that's really important to me. Yeah. And other artists, I want to feed people. That's just a thing. So, cause then you feel like you're getting paid, Yeah.
I don't know. I agree. I completely agree. So both of you have been very successful at being producers. Tell me what, how do you, what's the first step? Like you find a venue. Tell me how this works, Sergio. What's your first step when you're trying to go out and get yourself a show?
If I want to produce a show, yes, the first step for me was, maybe I would say something before even that is what would prompt anyone to want to produce a show. Why would you want to embark on such a headache? So for me, my reasons for doing that was I started to see certain things and I was like, oh, I'm not seeing diversity in lineups. I'm not seeing representation. So the first thing that prompts me to want to do a show was that. I was like, I know a lot of funny women and a lot of funny LGBTQ comedians or people of color, and I never see them on stage. So that was one reason I did it. Once I made that decision, I had to find a venue that I thought is easy to get to, can accommodate a good enough audience, and do they historically have events? If they don't have events, then you have to invent the wheel. But if they have events, you're like, oh, you know the concept of having someone come in and put something together. So that was it. And then once that's done, it was negotiating a deal that would be profitable, that I can actually pay the comics. My goal when I started producing was, as long as I don't end up in the red, I don't care. But I want to be able to pay people. If all I can give you is $20, it's $20 more than I got for a lot of shows that I've done. So then that becomes the second part. The second part is will this venue be receptive to either paying a flat fee or allowing for tips or selling tickets.
Okay. So let's say, so that's your reasoning for doing the show, for making the show, for even the reason why you started producing. Because I know you weren't even in comedy very long when you started
5 months.
actually. Yeah, 5 months. And then all of a sudden this person comes on the scene, Sergio Novoa, and just starts banging out shows. And it was crazy. It was like, who is this person? Oh my God, I want to know this person. Like, yeah, which I always think is hilarious when you're just like the people. Well, we'll talk about that later, but just at one point I did have some shows. I had a once a week and I had an every other weekend one. And it was crazy. That plus full-time job plus just doing my regular comedy gigs was crazy. So it's so much work, you know. So that was so what did you do? You would go into a place and just be like, I
So
like
I went
this
to a
place.
Yeah, I went into a place. So what happened is once I knew I wanted to do a show, everywhere I went, I would scan the venue and I would say, oh, what does this place have? Does it lend itself to a show? What are the acoustics like? What's the crowd like? What's parking like? Like I factored all those things in. And then once I did, I created a deck for myself, which basically put all the things that I would do. It's like, my name is Sergio, I'm a comic, I'd like to produce a monthly show. Here, this is what it would look like. So then I would give this venue, this deck, and the deck would showcase like, okay, got it here. Even though they didn't know who the comedians are, I would put like, you know, here's the standard lineup, here's my angle, here's the approach I want to take, and then hope that they would say yes. And also the great thing about doing shows when I started is that I didn't know the rules. So people were imposing rules on me and I was like, why is it that way? Why do I have to follow that? And now looking back 3 years into comedy, it was a great time because I didn't have to follow anyone's rules or formats. I just did what instinctively came naturally to me. Now that I know the structure of a joke, now that I know how to set up a joke, how to arc a set, how to present it to the public, it's great that I know the rules, but in a way the rules are kind of binding me a little bit because I no longer have the freedom to just like, that's not a well-structured joke, Sergio. It's not going to work. And I know now why it doesn't work. And producing a show was kind of the same thing. It's like, looking back, it was pretty ballsy of a 5-month-in comic at the time to say, let me produce a show. But luckily, I did have a small business. I am very detail-oriented, and I'd like to create a good product. That discipline showed up because they were like, wow, we get approached by a lot of people, but no one's ever been this structured. No one's ever said, here is the plan. And that was when I figured that out, that venues were reacting that way, it was easier because the venue was like, oh, this guy has an entire setup already. Like, here it is. And then you go down to the negotiating. You know, like when you first start, you're willing to do anything for nothing. And then once I got that first experience, I was like, we're never doing that again. We are getting a flat rate. If it's gonna cost me $100 to do a flyer, and I want to pay each comic at least $20, and then I'll give the person closing $40, I need $250 at least to break even. So then I kind of made a budget for myself. It's like, I can do a show at your venue. It'll cost you this much.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And then start negotiating. Yeah, then start negotiating. And then, of course, if the venue is going to pay me, then I have the responsibility to put on a good show and make sure that we have an audience. So then that's the next layer.
I actually want to get to that as well, like promotion, booking, those kind of things too. But I want to ask Pam, like same question to you. Like, how are you finding the venues? How are you approaching them? How are you? What's your pitch?
I'm completely the opposite of Sergio. I'm just an artist, and everybody asks me. Asiento came to me during the pandemic because I was doing outdoor shows in front of Mutiny Radio. You know, saying, hey, we have to. And Asiento approached me and said, hey, we're open now. Do you want to do comedy outside? You can bring an audience. I mean, and I was like, yeah. And then same thing, Atlas is a block away. I'm all grassroots. I mean, I had Mutiny, and then half a block away is Asiento, and then half a block in the other direction is Atlas. And then I have friends that own bars. My buddy owns Booze Land, and he was hemorrhaging money, and he was like, Pam, help. And I said, hey, and he's like, I got this upstairs. And I was like, great. And then OMG, same thing. They were like, what can we do? I need help. And I was like, I gotcha, bro. So it's, for me, it's all personal, but it's the way I've run my whole life. I've never applied for a job. I was a nanny for 13 years in San Francisco. Everyone asked me. I've always been the person that's been passed around. Even when I taught in schools, it's just like, people are like, she's good at what she does, talk to her. But it's only because I don't want to produce. I just want to be on stage. Let's get this fucking straight, friends. I only produce shows because it gives me stage time. I just want to perform. I hate producing. I hate getting an audience. I hate having all the responsibility. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate promotions.
Booking it and all that bullshit. Yeah.
Facebook. I hate begging people for shows. I hate begging for tips. I hate producing. I just want to perform. I love telling jokes. All I want to do is be on stage. That's all I want, ever, all the time, in any context. Like, I'll sing karaoke. Put me on stage, please. The only reason I own Mutiny Radio is because I needed a stage, and no fairy Asian is going to swoop down and help out Pam Benjamin. So she's going to give herself her own fucking stage time. That's been my whole life. That's what it is. Someday, someone might recognize me. If not, I'll die. But guess what? I get to perform as much as I fucking want, and I'm happy. So I don't care if it's for 5 people or 5,000. I'm never 5,000. I just want to perform. That's it. That's it.
Got it.
Yeah, and I mean, and I
Got it. And by the way, that's really interesting because you guys are you're two sides of the same coin. Sergio, you're one person that didn't have a reputation behind you in San Francisco, and you were able to go out there and make it happen, knowing that you were going to need to step up a little bit more to show how much you could give back to this venue because you weren't an established comedian yet. Then the other side of it is Pam's been around. No offense, Pam, but she's been around. And so like, yeah, they know her. So you know what I mean? So like, it's very interesting. You guys have very different, you're coming from very different places, you know, which I think is really interesting.
The reason too I factored in the business element of it is, as a business owner, I constantly have people pitching things to me. And as a business owner, it really boiled down to the bottom line. What's it going to cost for me to do this? Am I going to break even? So I knew to appeal to them in that regard. But the great thing behind that too, and I think it speaks to what Pam said earlier, once the shows were running, I did a show at a hotel downtown. They saw me at another show and they said, who put this together? I said, oh, I'm the producer. My name is Sergio. They're like, hey, we have this great venue. Would you be interested in doing the show there? And I did 2 shows there before I moved out of San Francisco. But it was this thing of like, now that this thing is in motion, people wanted to work with me. And it was great on some level, because all of a sudden I was getting messages from comedians. Like, I have over 100 unread messages that I'm like, I can't get to everything right now. I mean, even in my text messages, I mean, you know, it's like I have 58 text messages that I haven't read, 132 Facebook messages that I have not opened. So it's, it was this thing of like, holy cow, now that people know that I do this, everyone wants to get in front of me. And it was really, it was a tough thing, which is another thing about producing. So yes, I agree with Pam.
Yeah.
When I have someone who approached me and they wanted tips on how to produce, my first question to them was, why do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Do you understand how much work goes into it? And the frustrating part for me as a producer was to do a show where you work your butt off and then you have a comedian come in, doesn't care what they do on stage. You're like, I'm doing it for me, fuck everyone. Dude, that's not how the world works. Like, I worked my butt off to get this venue and you're sitting here baked halfway off your ass, not delivering and these are like people who are so talented. And I was like, what are you doing? You're like shooting me in the foot after I'm giving you this stage time. So it is this, I agree with Pam, it's work. I didn't even think of the performing element. I just thought I want a little more diversity. And if nothing ever comes out of comedy, if I decide to stop doing comedy tomorrow, which had you told me that I would ever live in LA, I would have told you were crazy. I hated LA. Now I love LA. Love it.
Yay.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, if nothing ever comes out, I'm happy that I produce shows that show diversity, that always had equal men, equal women, and I'm proud of that. Literally, nothing else
Nice.
comes out of comedy.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know. I do Match Game Apocalypse, which both of you have been on many times, but it's my thing was I have a huge burlesque, tons of people. I'm kind of like in that world as well. And then and I know, and then I also have comedians, and I know comedians, I know actors, I know all these different people, musicians, and stuff. And that's why I love Match Game Apocalypse. I just put everybody on the same, and they're all on an equal footing because it's a game show. So, you know, but yes, when I did actual shows, comedy shows, I had shows before the pandemic. And one of them was because I had a friend who owned a bar who said, "You're a comedian, you want to put on a show." That ended up being every Saturday night. Until that bar closed, she went out of business. And then I got another show, what was a friend of hers who was like, "I heard you did great things for her." So same kind of thing. It's like, you kind of get your foot in the door and then it just kind of snowballs, you know? And, but here's one of the things I want to talk to you guys about, because this is something that was crazy when you have a show that you're booking. The bookings. Like, tell me, Pam, tell me how you book your shows. Like,
So I do it. I do a unique way of doing it. I mean, I know, I'm real clear on what I am in the San Francisco community. Like, I'm the first place you do a set. I'm the place that you get good. I hope that some of these kids, you know, Ian Levy was just passed at the Punchline. He did his first set with me. Yeah, he did his first set with me at Mutiny Radio. You know, same thing with Pete Balmer. There's a whole group of guys that have done a lot of time, and Mutiny Radio was their first place. I'm not making any like, oh, I'm so big and whatever. So the way that and my shows are only 30 to 40 people max. So it's not like super high stakes, but I take everything seriously. That being said, I do what's called blitzkrieg booking every 6 weeks. Not every 6. So I book 6 weeks at a time.
Pam, hold on one second. You
Oh,
know,
yeah,
we're
yeah.
only seeing the bottom half of your face. Can
Oh,
you?
okay. Yeah. I'll get lower.
Yeah. And on a side note, since I interrupted you for a second, thank you, because you were one of the first places I ever did comedy.
Oh,
And you had such faith in me that, like, I did your show a couple times and then you let me headline, and I was like, I headline. Like, it was like a huge moment for me, you know, like a year and a half into comedy, like, and to have you've always had great respect for me, and I just really appreciate it. So I just wanted to
yay!
say that.
And
The
it
old
is
ladies
very
got
true,
to stick
Pam. I
together.
mean,
You know,
it is very true. The first time I did Mutiny Radio was on a Monday, and I wanted to make people laugh. That was the only reason I got into comedy. That was it. I just wanted to make people laugh. It wasn't about anything else. And I went into Mutiny Radio and I did the Monday workshop. And I remember thinking, God, Sergio, you have nothing to contribute. There is nothing I can add a tag or anything to a joke. And Pam was very helpful. And I remember I went to her one day because a comedian said something that was, I felt less than kind about me. And I said to you, oh, this person just kind of agitated me. And she said, you said something, fuck them. They're probably jealous or something. Don't pay them any mind. And it was so simple, but it was so true. And that reminder that we all need, you know, people creep in your head. You know how many shows I've done where people are like, oh, you're too this or too that or not enough of this. And then all of a sudden you're like second guessing everything. And when you said those words, I always remembered that. It's like, just do whatever you're going to do, Sergio.
Yep.
People are going to like it or hate it. Doesn't even matter. So yes, you are a rite of passage in San Francisco. I am totally grateful to all the lessons I learned at Mutiny Radio. You know, and I don't talk about my personal life on stage ever, as far as like what I'm dealing with. But there's a lot of things that I was dealing with. My cousin overdosed, which Pam, you knew about, because literally I'm launching my podcast the night before he had overdosed and had to have the bathroom broken into. I was running business with 2 locations with staff. I was being pulled in so many directions. So I was like, you have to focus things in wherever they need to be at that moment. So like, really was helpful to get me like, every Monday you're gonna do this. You're gonna record on Tuesdays at 11, you know, like all these little things. So yes, I am totally grateful to everything I learned through you and San Francisco in general. So yes, since you've mentioned Eerie, I wanted to go without, you know.
Absolutely
are
right. And every time I go on stage at one of Pam's shows, the first thing I do is acknowledge Pam. And she is not only loves comedy, she loves supporting people in comedy. Like she is, if there's anybody in the world you ever want in your audience, it's Pam Benjamin.
If I like you.
You've always liked me. So
Yeah.
yeah. So like,
No, I champion specific people. There's a couple of people that I champion, and I'll even stand behind it and be like, "Dad, this is one of my people," you know. And I have a couple of them, like, you know, fucking Lauren Kraut. I just love that. Her,
oh, I
Ian
love
Langland.
her. She's
You know,
nuts.
doing.
I love her.
But I have my favorite little comics that I'm in their corner and I'll fucking punch my way out. Okay, but back to the way I book.
Okay, back to what you were saying. Sorry.
So I blitzkrieg book. So I book 6 weeks of shows, but I underbook. So I'm supposed to book 5, and then with a guest set. So I book 4 people for every show all at once in like 3 days.
Yes.
And I'll put it on my page first and be like, all right, it's time for blitzkrieg booking. If you're in, tell me. And basically everybody that messages me pretty much that has been to any of my open mics, I book. If they haven't been to any of my things and I've never seen them before, that gives me the opportunity to say, hey, I've never seen you before. I have a tendency to book from my open mics that I run 4 days a week. So if you'd like to come to Mutiny Radio or Bar Dolores or Boozland or, you know, and then I put that out. So it's just an opportunity to meet new people and then connect with them, bring them to my other shows, and then kind of put them in the stable and book them in shows. And so, but I'll book anyone. It's like, and I've reached out to people and they haven't messaged me back. So that's why I just kind of like, I don't like rejection anymore. And I ask people, and when I don't like to be rejected. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be what I would want. I would want someone to give me a show if I ask, because asking is fucking hard. It's fucking hard. And when someone doesn't respond to you, man, my feelings have been so hurt. I have some beef with people that they don't even know I have beef with them because I sent them a message to ask to be on their show and they never messaged me back. And they left me like in their unsent file or whatever. And I'm like, don't you know who I am? I'm Pam fucking Benjamin. But then I'm like, the hubris of you, Pam. But still, my feelings are hurt. And so I don't want other people to ever feel that way. So if you ask me to do a show, man, I'll work you in. And if you suck, I'll light you early. But usually if you're new like that, then you're kind of a bringer. And God bless you.
Yeah.
For promoting my show. And I'll give you 5 minutes to stink it up if you bring 6 of your friends, but I'm not going to call it a bringer show. But, you know, I'm going to be, I don't want to call myself the gatekeeper because it's just, I'm like a door. We're in a pasture and there's a crappy fence with like two things like this. And then there's like a cattywampus thing. There's a nail and like maybe a piece of chicken wire that holds it on. That's me. I'm that gate.
Oh my God. So I do want to tell you when I was running shows, it was funny because there were people that I did ask, hey, here's a clip. Love to be on your show. Just let me know. And honestly, even if you're just like, no, you know, kind of got it booked or whatever, fine. But yes, never heard from them again. And then once I started running shows, it was like, hey, kind of embarrassing, never answered you. Can I be on your show? And it was like, you get this big clit thing where you're just like, you know what, bitch? Like, you know, but you try not to be petty. Don't be petty.
Sure.
Don't be petty. But it is kind of nice to be like,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, I don't know, maybe send me another clip. Like, you know, it's just I know you can be I got very dickful at one point when people were constantly hitting me up to get booked, but in like a shitty way. Like that's the weird thing, right, Sergio? Like how do you book? I mean, what's your thing, man?
My booking approach was completely different. The first thing I did is I booked, if I was going to have 6 comedians, which was typically my standard, I would book 3 women out the gate. So the first thing I did is I booked the women. I was like, okay, What voices are not being heard out there? So then I would find these people. Then I would say, okay, now I need to book 3 men. And then what is not being represented? So once that was done, what is the venue? Like, you know, I did a show at a brewery where I could get away with a little more things. The coffee shop, not so much. So when you did the coffee, you know, like if I booked someone for the coffee shop, I realized they would have different things. So I basically would book them if I have seen them, which it made me go out and look at people constantly and think like, oh, this is a unique voice. They would get done. I would only book 6. I would book them months in advance, and it was done. To what Pam was saying, if I had $1 for every unanswered email that I've sent out, not just, hey, I want to do your show. By the way, if you are a comedian and you want to do someone's show, sending an email saying, can you put me on your show? It's not the way to do it. Especially if the person hasn't seen you. Send a clip of
at least a clip, for fuck's sake.
Send something. At least, you know, like, hi, I saw, this is my email. Hi, my name is Sergio. I saw your post. I'm interested in doing your show. Here are a couple of clips for your consideration. Thank you. That's my email. Literally, you can record this and type it. I have so many emails of like, can I do your show? Hey, when can I do your show? It's like, who are you? What, you know, so, and I've learned not to take anything. Well, doing this, if I realized a long time ago, if I'm gonna be a stand-up comic, I need to be like water off a duck's back. I cannot take personally whether you like me or not. There are people who think I'm funny. There are people who think I'm not funny at all. Don't care either way. I still sleep at night. I don't pay any attention. The gay, and also, as a gay comedian, do you know how many people have said to me, oh, your material's too gay? Do you think I want to hear period jokes? Do you think I want to hear rape jokes? Do you think I want to hear you masturbating on your couch in front of your roommate? I don't. But these are the gatekeepers. So the number of times that I've had people tell me, you're too much of this or too much of that, I literally tuned it all out. Otherwise, I would have never started comedy. But let me tell you, I have sent emails to bookers in San Francisco who you all very well know, who never responded to me or who have seen my work. The one that gets me is when you get booked for a show, you kick ass, they pay you no money, and never book you again. And then you see the people they book, and I think to myself, wait, you never booked me again, and I killed, and you're putting this person on stage. It's okay, I don't need to be on your show. And that was the only thing I kind of came to. So I don't take it personally because, trust me, so many unanswered emails of clips that I've sent people. And you know what? I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay because they can drink coffee. And I just kind of leave it at that. But like I told you, I have 132 unanswered emails on my phone of people that have just, and now that I started producing shows in LA, it's like, oh my God. Because if you guys think the open mic scene in San Francisco is crowded, yeah, it's not crowded at all.
Wow, really?
We're talking 4 to 5 hours. I mean, for me to get to the improv, I get to the improv at 5 o'clock. They put out a bucket. They only hand out a certain amount of tickets. Those tickets go in the bucket. You have no idea when and if they'll call you. You only get 3 minutes, and you're out of there sometime around 7, 8 o'clock. So you basically spend 3 hours with the hope of potentially going up. All the other mics you have to pay for. So it's a very interesting thing when I would encounter comedians in San Francisco and the chip on their shoulder, and you're like, I just booked someone who has TV credits, who has a Comedy Central special, and this person was extremely kind and easy to book. So it was, I've had comedians in San Francisco literally tell me, where are you going to put me in the lineup? Oh, I don't want to do 10 minutes. I want to do 20 minutes. Oh, I only do your show if I headline. I'm like, I didn't ask you to book my show. I'm just saying if you're available. Like, I've never told a comedian, and I've had bookers tell me, hey, do you mind if I put you first? I go, you put me wherever you think I'll fit.
Yep, me too.
You know, and whether you like me or
not. Putting me first is the best idea. I have the energy to bring to the room. I love going first. I love it. I love taking the bullet. I actually, this is untrue, I'm going to say, because I was last night at Alameda, and Andrea was first, and she got shafted because they were still ordering. People were still ordering things, so they were distracted during her set. And during my set, all their food had like arrived, and they were all kind of like relaxing and
ready.
so they had the opportunity to laugh at my jokes. where the service was taking away the attention for. So I'm going to redact my statement and say that I like going second.
But you hit a valid point too.
I honestly, I
Pam.
know it sounds really weird. It depends on how many people are on the show. I tend to like to go a little bit earlier, like second, third. That's like my sweet spot, because I feel like, but it depends on the show, of course. This is completely off topic, but it depends on the show, because I feel like there's some shows where you got like 7, 8 comics. You're like, fucking sake, man, come on. By the time you get to the headliner, everyone's like,
comedy pneumonia. So let's talk about this from the producing standpoint. I like shows that are an hour, 20-minute, no intermission. Once you get over, and when I used to do theater, I used to produce theater shows. I used to be a director, blah, 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 back in my other life. I preferred shows that are an hour, 20 minutes, no intermission. I don't, once you let people go for an intermission, I feel like they don't come back. Sometimes in the theater too. So, and that's why movies are an hour, 10, hour, 20 minutes. So I think even hour, 20 minutes is pushing it. So I like to have 5 comedians and a host and a tip set. So, you know, you've got, and then you can let your headliner stretch a little because they're the 7th comic, but it's after the tip set. So everyone's kind of refreshed a little, and you got their money already. So they're in, you know, and then you hit them with it. But anything over hour, 20 minutes, I get man, I got to go to the punchline tonight. And motherfucker, once if they start at 8:10 and it's 9:30 and they're like, we got 6 left. I'm like, oh, why?
yeah,
Like, and I can't imagine the audience feeling any better.
right. How long, what time do you have to show up when you do punch? You know, I've never done Sunday punch.
I would like to be there by 7:30 tonight. It's my turn. I haven't gotten up since October 10th. I've been there the past couple weeks. I've been wearing the frosting the cupcake, wearing cute clothes. You know, I think that tonight's the night. It's hard though in that, because they're booking a show, and I understand when I go there, if they put up another older skinny white lady, I ain't getting up. For example, the other week they put up, no, I'm honest. The other week they put up Clara Bijel from Alameda, and when she got up after her set, I left. They're not going to put skinny white women. If Lauren Kraut gets on the bill, I don't, after her, I love seeing her, but after her, I'm out of there. They're not going to put up 2 middle. If Susan Maleta gets up, I'm not getting up. I understand, because why would you have 2 of the same on a show?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. You want to have an alternatively sized woman. You want to have, you know, the traditional anorexic. No, I'm kidding. But I get it. And there's only going to be 4 women's slots max out of 14. So,
wow.
Right. I'm just thinking numbers, because I'm like, am I going to get on? Is it my turn? What's going on? And you just know, like, from who's there.
Wow. Wow, that sounds crazy.
Awful.
Sergio, I want to go back to you really quick. What the fuck? People actually say your set's too gay or some shit like that? Really?
I've had people say, oh, dude, you're funny, but your material is just a little too much gay stuff. And I feel like I've made a rule when I perform. I'm not going to be vulgar, so I don't say bitch, fuck, hole, none of that. I don't use, vulgar terms for genitalia or anything like that. Am I tabooish? Yes. Do I say that I flirt with straight men and date straight men? Yes. The dirtiest joke I have is where I say, eye contact followed up with a blowjob. That's like the word I use, blowjob. But yeah, I've had a lot of people be like, dude, you're really funny, but that was just a little too gay. And I will see audiences. And this is the thing where I would get so frustrated with people and their feedback. It's like Pam just pointed out, if she sees a woman who looks like her, Claire Bell, I know Claire Bell, she's a great comic. You know that you're not going to go up anymore. So you're like, forget it. I, on the other hand, I go up and I feel like, when am I going to lose the audience once they figure out that I'm gay? Sometimes they figure out right away. Otherwise,
wow, interesting.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I have a whole new set written about. I identify as happy, even in San Francisco. I had a show at a show where literally the room was packed, everyone's laughing, QQQ, and I get to the joke where I say, women need to feel safe before they have sex with men. Women need to feel safe before they have sex with you, which is why I only have sex with men. I could see the lights go off in some of the men. They're
Wow.
like, huh? And I was just like, if you're a straight comic, you never have to worry about that. You never have to worry about when am I going to lose him for simply being who I am. So every time I go on stage, it is a thought that I have. If it's a room full of like, like most shows, 7 guys and 1 woman, I'm like, how are these 7 guys going to react when I do it? The only saving grace I've had is that when I do well, they cannot argue that. It's like, it worked. People like him. They're laughing at him. But yeah, it's something that I've had people tell me, you're too much of this, not enough of that. You're too polished. You're not polished enough. You're too Latino. You're not Latino enough. And it's like the number of straight men that I see go on stage, deliver gay jokes, and people just eat them up. And they're terrible jokes. I'm like, so you're okay with a straight man talking about, oh, I took a dick for $1 million. Oh yeah, gay men are the toughest. They take a dick up the ass. You think that's hilarious. But I say, straight men think that gay men have it easy and that we're constantly having sex, which is true, but not easy. They're like, they don't know what to do. So it's really interesting to hear everyone's kind of perspective and how they navigate this industry. And this is why when I started doing shows, I was like, what voices am I not hearing? So I always try to have an LGBTQ comic other than myself. And I always wanted to be, if it could be a woman, wonderful. That's why Funny Foreigners came about. Funny Foreigners gave me the green light to book people that are not the standard people you see at every show. And not that they're not good. I'll use this person as an example, who is such an amazing person. And I think he's so hilarious and so good and so kind. Paul Conyers, nothing negative to say about him, but Paul will always get stage time.
Oh yeah.
Always will
He's
get
awesome.
it. And I've booked him. Yeah, he's always going to get stage time. He's good looking. He's tall. His comedy's on point. And my interactions with him were so pleasant. I would book Paul Conyers. If I was going to look for a straight male comic, he would be at the top of my list because he was so pleasant to work with too, and so nice. And he had really nice things to say. And like my interactions with him were always pleasant. And I'm only using him because we know him. This is not, we could change his name to John Smith. Doesn't even matter.
Oh yeah,
but he will always get stage time.
Absolutely, he's easy to book. He's not gonna. Yeah. No one's gonna get offended. Absolutely. Well, I know what you're saying. Go ahead, Pam.
Eerie, you might agree with me on this. There's definitely ageism against women in.
Oh my God, you think?
Like it sucks. I have one line in my book, and it says, be likable, don't do menopause jokes. Like if I read the room right and there's enough older women, I can do my menopause jokes and they murder. And sometimes I did them at a gay room and it was all gay guys. I actually emptied out the blowjob room at Powerhouse in Soma. They all loved my menopause jokes so much. But seriously, it's absolutely true. At the end of my whiskey dick joke, the entire bar did a shot of whiskey. It was a beautiful night.
Oh my God, I love
that. It was, I feel like, and I love doing my menopause jokes because that's real to me and that's really happening. And I used to love doing my abortion jokes, but I kind of feel like I don't have a dog in that fight anymore now that don't have the ability to have babies. But menopause is a real thing and I have a lot of stuff about it, but I know that I have to read the room.
Yeah.
And if it's, young, if it's Gen Zers, they don't give a fuck about menopause. They don't care. And if it has to be the right age group for it to work. And so, because every time I do them, I know exactly what Sergio was talking about. I see the light in the audience's eyes go out. And I'm just like, no one wants to hear about menopause. Or my hot glasses, they're like, shut up.
And that's part of you. That's part of your experience. And
menopause, everyone wants you to shut up about it. And that's why I want to scream about it and tell everybody, because it's me being political with my work. I love being political as a comedian. That's why I love abortion jokes. I don't want to stand up on stage and do dick jokes just because I want people to laugh. I want them to laugh and think later and be like, oh, that was smart. That was interesting. And I want to make people think. I want to be political. Words are political. It's important. And so I want to have them think about important issues. And that's why I get into feminism. And that puts the light out of people's eyes as well. They'll be like, enough feminism jokes. Yeah. And I know guys don't want to hear about women being equal because they're like, just shut up, get in the kitchen and put your dick in my mouth. I get it. their dick. Yeah.
Wait,
But
wait, okay,
I was gonna say, wait a
Sergio.
minute, Pam. This says
Sergio, the
structure.
fact that you just went, hold on, wait, what? I get, Sam, I completely get you. And I want to tell you something. There was a long time where I didn't want anyone to know that I was old because I'm an old person. And it was a very big deal to me. Like I would be like, no, I'm not. Like I wouldn't tell anybody how old I was. I would even lie about it. You're one of the only people I ever met that was like, wow, you look great for being old. Like, you know, because I'm older than you. And like, you're like, you look great. So now I actually have jokes about it. And I never used to do that on stage because I was like, clearly no one wants to know about that. No one wants to know about being an old ass bitch and having your skin sliding off your body. And you know what I mean? And like, it's no one wants to know about that. You know, I just wrote a new joke about, you know, my man and I are hanging out and he goes to put his hand down my pants. I'm like, no, I'm wet. And he's like, oh, that's hot. I'm like, no, we were laughing earlier and I'm wet because I peed. And it's not like the hot wet, it's like the warm wet. You know what I'm saying? It's not, you don't want to, let me clean up a little bit before we, and then look at Sergio, look at what, that's hilarious.
You know, it's funny you're saying this because I was at Flappers and this woman went up. I would say she's probably 25 maximum. And she did an entire 5-minute set on her period. And it was incredible. And then I went up to her and I said, this was before I even did shows, but I was like, I always compliment comedians because I just feel they don't get enough compliments. So, especially as a woman, I'm like,
and we don't kill ourselves, you mean? Is that why you do that?
I was like, you did 5 minutes on your period and you killed this room. I'm a huge fan. I'm on board. But yes, you're right. I mean, the age, which is why when I did shows, my entire reason was like, what? Also, if I were to have a party tomorrow and you were to come to my party, you would be like, wow, Sergio knows a lot of different people. And I was like, I want my lineups to reflect my friendships. I want my lineups to look like the people that I would have dinner with or invite over to a birthday party. So that's, this is why I went out of my way to try and book different people. I mean, you know, so yeah, no, it's something that's out there. Someone like Louis C.K., who is visually non-threatening, balding, middle-aged, overweight man, he's non-threatening. A hot woman is going to distract the men. The women are not going to like her in the audience because they're thinking my husband is probably fantasizing about fucking her. A gay guy who owns himself and is comfortable be like, oh, I don't want to hear that gay stuff because of their internalized homoerotic fantasies, or the bro, or whatever it is. I mean, these are all the things that you're battling. And it's like, you know, and I take care of myself. I work out. I dress up when I perform. And an audience member said, oh, it's interesting. They're like, you didn't intimidate this audience because I figured looking clean and sharp like you work out, it's like, people in the audience will be like, I can't relate to that guy. You know, I'm overweight. And I was like, I've never thought about it this way. But in the last 3 years, what I thought comedy was, and all the things that make a show successful is from the minute you go up and you say hi on stage to the minute you get off. It's like so many factors: the audience, the age, how dark it is, how drunk are they, too drunk, not drunk enough. Pam nailed it. I did a show recently where the people were serving food during the first two comics. And I remember seeing the video, I go, this is really distracting. Like, we need to figure this out. And when you said it, I was like, there it is, Sergio. This was the reminder that you do need to take action on that. So next time I do a show at this venue, I'm gonna say, we need to get the food out of the way before the first comedian goes up. Because it really does take away from the comedian. I feel bad for the comic because the jokes were really well done.
Yeah.
Or have like a really long warm up. Like that's when you do crowd work. Like whatever it is you need to do.
It's the host set. So you're like, so the person knows that this is the way it's going to be. Absolutely. Because it's so distracting. There's so many distractions that can happen that are unavoidable. And then there's the ones that are avoidable. And then, I mean, we don't have time to get into hecklers or audience or how drunk when they're too drunk or all that. But
so next thing I want to talk about a little bit with producing shows is promotion. I think that's the biggest thing. You can land the show, you can book the show, you can do the stuff, but how do you get people to go to the fucking show?
When you figure that out, please tell me.
Okay. When I was producing a show, the one thing that the only thing that really worked was just doing it continuously to the point where people know the show's there on a certain time, on a certain day. And it's like word of mouth, and people start going because it's like, oh, it's a good show. I heard it's a good show. It's a good show. It's a good show. And then you build that audience. That's what I noticed. You keep promoting it the same way, but you just keep building that audience. And when I started, I was all about like posters and this and that and promotion and paying for advertising. And what I realized was it was more about just getting the audience and getting them to like start promoting from within, you know. And I would ask them, how'd you hear about the show? And they would be like, oh, I just, you know, my friend told me, and we're in the neighborhood, and oh, they said they had a good time. And, you know, but what do you guys, what have you found? What have you, Pam, any, I mean,
I have no insights.
you ain't got nothing. You ain't got nothing.
I still don't understand Instagram in any fashion. I try to Facebook as much as possible, but today they just put a restriction on me, and I'm like, I don't know why. Because I use their algorithms for free and they don't like it. I make Eventbrites. I do SF Fun Cheaps. That's it. I mean, and I just consistency. 6 shows a day, 6 days a week. Grind.
Grind. And the weird thing about your shows, Pam, is like, I've been at your shows where you show up, it's 15 minutes before the show, there's no one there. And you're like, I don't know what's going on. There's like a whole bunch of people RSVP'd. And then like 10 minutes later, there's like 20 people there. And I'm like, I guess they all rode in the same car. I don't know what happened, but it's the weirdest thing. You know, Sergio, I mean, what did you find worked the best for you?
For me, I'm a visual person as well. So for me, having a flyer that was eye-catching was number one. I needed something that really made the customer think, oh, this is a special event. So for me, a flyer was key. Creating a Facebook event and then inviting people, personally inviting them to the show. So I would like draft an email. I'm like, hey, I'm doing that. There was that. If you can sell an Eventbrite, it was great. Eventbrite's a double-edged sword. One, it gets you in front of thousands of people, but they also have 1,000 shows. So you kind of get lost in the shuffle. But Eventbrite, everyone knows. It's easy to Google. It's easy to make that work together. And I find as far as the show and when it starts, I would say doors open at 7:30, show starts at 8. So then I knew there was a half hour for people to get to the show. So I found all these little things to be helpful. Then I would do whatever local, I would Google comedy show San Francisco, and I would see what would pop up and where they were popping up. So then wherever they were popping up, I was like, oh, these things tend to pop up on these platforms. So then I would submit to those platforms. Not always would they accept it, but I would submit to them. And then, and you're right, I greeted every guest at the door, and I would always say, how did you find out about the show? And they would tell me. And then I would sometimes send a thank you email afterwards and say, thank you guys for coming to the show. I hope you had a good time. Here's the flyer for the next show. So I always have my flyer already. I would try to. I work with a designer. I don't design it myself. I have the visual, I just don't have the technical. And I would say to them, here's the flyer for the next show. Thank you for being here. And I found that really endeared me to the audience when I would go up and host. Because, oh, this is the guy who greeted us at the door. So there was like a little connection to me. So yeah, that being said, I've done shows where I was very happy and I sold out. I was like, yay. I've also done shows where I'm like, oh, well, this show may not be viable. And I just learned to move on. If I have a concept for a show and people, at the end of the day, if people are not buying what I'm selling, my product is not sellable. And that's it. It's really just business 101. I don't take it personally anymore. Living in LA, there are certain things that fly here that would never fly in San Francisco, and vice versa. So I've had to do a complete mental shift of like, oh, it's not San Francisco. This is LA. They do things differently here. So yeah, those are the things I would do. And then I would post the story at least once a week. The week of the show, I went really heavy on promotion. That means I would get up in the morning and I'm like, create a little post, tag everyone. What I find surprising sometimes, And then one of the biggest differences between LA comics and San Francisco comics, you know, every image I created for each comic didn't cost me money. Like those don't come for free. And I was amazed how many comedians wouldn't even bother to post it on their social media.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like,
Oh yeah, no,
why are
nobody cares.
you?
I'm sorry, I have to go because I gotta get to the punchline. But I love you, and I wish we could talk
Oh
forever.
my gosh.
I'm gonna see my
It's
cats because
okay.
I'm old, but I have to get to the. I have to get there by a certain time, otherwise I'll never get it. And it's like
No,
super.
no,
But I
no.
Good
love
luck.
this
Pam,
conversation.
Pam,
was
thank you
amazing.
so
You make it
much
up.
for being on the show, Pam. I really
You're amazing.
appreciate it.
Love both
Thank
of you.
you.
Love, love,
I
love.
hope you get up tonight. Get it,
I
girl.
do too.
Good luck.
Okay,
Hope
love,
you
love,
blow
bye,
up.
bye, bye.
Girl.
Oh, that's me. Bye.
Bye.
That's what I pressed. What button? God damn it! There it is. Okay.
She's so crazy.
A little hurricane.
So she is, and that's why I love her. So Sergio, yeah, so it's a lot of work, right? I mean, it's you know, especially when you have multiple shows, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. I mean, yeah, I've had a lot of producers approach me and ask me for feedback, input, guidance, whatever it is. This guy was really nice. He's like, I'd like to pick your brain. I'd like to take you out to lunch. And I was like, well, clearly you must work in the business world because you put two and two together. And we had lunch and it was great. And I said, what do you want to know? And I literally was like, this is everything I do. And I was never shy of sharing what I learned. I remember I did Best of SF Comedy, and Christopher John, who I think is such a good comedian, I told him, I'm like, dude, you should do classes on writing because his jokes are so well written. And it was, oh, why am I skipping? Lee, I think his last name was Lee. I forget. Really tall gentleman, white guy. I'm drawing a blank because I've been out of San Francisco for almost 3 years now. But he said, hey, how are you getting your shows filled? And I said, oh, I do this, and that. He's like, oh, okay, well, thank you. And like, I think sometimes in the comedy community or in general, people hold on to what they do and they don't want to share it because it's their little secret. It's like, look, none of us are reinventing the wheel. I'm more than happy to share what I know with people. And if you are less than kind, then I'm probably not going to be sharing anything with you. I don't even want to, interact with you. But I've literally, I'm in the process of producing a show with another comedian right now who he said, would you be interested in doing this? And we've had back and forth, and I really like her, and she's great, and she's very funny. And I've actually booked her so many times that I was like, yeah, we can do this together, And now I am co-producing a show with someone, which I'm always a little nervous, but she's a professional, she's an adult, she shows up, she's prepared. Like, I'm willing to go on that journey with you. But yeah, it is a lot of work. So if you're looking to produce a show, figure out why you want to do it. And if stage time is your reason, that's a completely viable reason, and own it. I want to do it so I can get stage time. I think that's great. If because you want to give more people of color a voice or women, all those are good reasons. Just own your reason and then commit to it. I think comedians have this tendency, they see it on TV and they think that things just magically happen. They don't. You have to write out a joke. You have to do it at an open mic. You have to test it. Eventually the joke becomes a living, breathing thing that you can do. Yeah. I've done a lot of projects with comics where they just think we can turn on the camera and everything's there. And it's just like, no, we got to run through this. We got to, do these things. Like we have to, they just don't want to do the work. I find, and I'm maybe generalizing. Mm-hmm. And if you're a comedian who wants to get on someone's show, honor the fact that a producer is working their butt off. Now, there may be producers who don't work their butt off, but fine. And this is why I did a good job. I did shows where the producers were literally smoking pot outside the entire time. They had no idea if the light was being run, if things were happening. And I was like, I would never want someone to drive 3 hours to do this. I would feel so bad for them. So this is why I go out of my way as a producer to do a good job, because I want you to know that I value your talent and I want you to have a good stage time. But yeah, if you get booked for a show, do your part. Be prepared. Yeah. Show up. I would have comedians show up on, oh my God, I would have comedians message me and say things like, hey, what time should I be there? Well, the show starts at 8 o'clock. What time do you think you should be here? And also they're sending me this message at like 7:30. Like, do you know what I have to do right now to get everything up? The backdrop, the lights, the microphone, the chairs. I don't have time to be, show starts at 8 o'clock. Come on.
Yeah. So, well, and then my other favorite is they're just fucking around on stage and then they're like, oh, I guess I'll do jokes now. That's like a huge pet peeve for me. I'm like, what are you doing? Don't say that. Like you're making a mockery. Don't be like that.
One of the worst phrases I hate to hear a comedian say on stage. So what should I talk about next? Really? You didn't, you knew you were doing 8 minutes. You didn't think this is going to be the arc to my set. I mean, even if and I've done shows where I did not perform well, where you would have been like, that dude is not funny. So I'm not going to say that I've nailed it every time I've been on stage. But no one can ever walk and say he wasn't prepared, he wasn't professional, he didn't have his material on point. Like, even if I bombed and the ship sank, you were like, all the makings were there. For some reason, it didn't work tonight.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes I would have comedians, I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I totally fucked up that set. And I was like, oh, okay, well, it happens, but there are comedians that I booked that I never booked again because they were so unpleasant to work with. And it's just like, oh my God, what are you doing? Do you want to perform? Like, are you doing this for yourself? Like, what's the point?
I always feel like, for me, it's always like, I feel like you have to do a good job because you don't know who's there. You don't know who's in the audience. There could be somebody that's just starting out that becomes somebody who has a great show that you want to be on someday. Like you have to really swim out every time. And Swim Out is from Gattaca, if you guys have ever seen that movie. Gattaca is this movie where it's like everyone's genetically engineered, and
Ethan Hawke.
And yes, and the one guy who's not, he's a love child. Him and his genetically engineered brother, they go and they have this thing where they swim out as far as they can in the ocean, and then to see who's going to chicken out and stop and swim all the way back. And the guy who's not genetically engineered always wins. And the guy who is genetically engineered says, I don't understand. I'm supposed to be stronger than you, faster than you. And he said, because I never left anything to swim back with. And so when I say people swim out, it means they left it all there. They gave everything they had. And I feel like, that's the thing when you go on stage and when you didn't do it. When you didn't do it. When you come off and you're like, fuck, I fucked it all up. Like I shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? And we all do it. Too cocky or not in it enough or didn't prepare enough or didn't figure out how to get ourselves in the right headspace or whatever. We've all fucking done it. And, normal people can go and have a bad day at work or like a phone it in day at work. But when you go and do it on comedy, you get off stage and you feel so shitty. It is the weirdest thing I've ever felt in my life. That I don't even know why I go back on stage.
Why do we do this to ourselves?
The fuck do I do that?
I tell people all the time. I said comedy is by far the most bipolar thing I have ever done on the planet. You go one night and you kill and everyone loves you and you're like, yes, I'm on the right path. The 2 hours later, you do the same thing and nothing happens.
Nothing.
The one thing I have learned recently, though, is that, and like you're right, we know as comedians where we need to pause, where we need to do everything. So when we don't deliver that, in our mind, we're like, damn it, I screwed up that joke. The audience has no clue of that.
Idea. Yeah.
So I've learned
I had 3 more taglines. That could have been so much better, but whatever.
So I've learned recently that as I've done a show and someone praises me afterwards, and then my response was like, oh man, I really screwed that up. And then I realized, I just undermined this person's compliment because they have no idea what the joke needs to be. They just laughed on the spot. I remind myself of that all the time. It's like, Sergio, the reality is somewhere between how you think you did, what the video clip shows you, and then what the audience got. The truth of that set, it's somewhere in there. And I'm very good about being objective when I see something. Like in watch, I'm like, okay, you stepped on your punchline. I notice I lick my lips now. The last 3 clips I've seen of myself, I lick my lips. I'm like, when did I start licking my lips? And I know when I started using some stupid lip thing and now I need it. So when it's not there, I'm like constantly like, anyway. So when I analyze my videos, I'm like, why are you licking your lips, Sergio? What do you think, you're Cher?
It's weird because I feel like we are hypercritical over it. But however, I'm sure there are comics that are not hypercritical of each. The point is stand-up's hard. That's the point. And
Stand-up is very difficult.
and it's very difficult. And we finish up. We are good to go on this. I want to say one more time, thank you so much to Pam Benjamin, who had to take off. She had to go to the Punchline San Francisco, and to Sergio Novoa.